All right, now bringing in our friend, yours, great friend of the program. We don't get to see him often enough hanging out in the NFC, but we love Joe Person of The Athletic. What's up, Joe?
Every 4 years, man, it's like the highlight of when in this case Wednesday morning. So thanks
Yeah.
for having me on, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great to see
thanks
you.
for setting the oatmeal down. Appreciate you kind of, you know, getting through the day. I really thought that one of these two teams would be 0-3 when we played. I did not suspect it would be the Cincinnati Bengals, and I didn't suspect that we would again be talking about the Bengals reuniting against Andy Dalton. A lot has happened in Charlotte, Joe. What are the wheels feeling like they've come off, or has it just been a whirlwind over the last month and a half? How can you explain the state of the franchise right now?
Yeah, it's a lot. I'm not terribly surprised that they made this move. I'm surprised it happened as quickly as it did.
Mm-hmm.
But anyone who watched those first two games, it was bad, guys. Like Bryce just looked like a shell of his former self. And they, as you guys know, they went out and spent a lot of money to improve the offensive line. They did a little better with playmakers, as Deontay Johnson specifically. But these were good, clean pockets he was getting the first 2 weeks of the season, and he wasn't staying in them. And he wasn't going through his progressions. He just looked skittish, and he'd leave the pocket. When he was in the pocket, his mechanics were bad. And I think Dave Canales, everybody thinks David Tepper, ordered this like a code red. And certainly, an owner like Tepper is going to be involved in the decision. But the more I learn about this, and it was kind of a gutsy call for a first-year coach, but he wasn't around when they drafted Bryce. And I think Dave Canales had just said, our offense can be way better than this. And, we're going to sit Bryce down. And I don't think anyone imagined, guys, just how good that offense would look 1 week against the Raiders, but with Andy Dalton behind center.
Yeah, the 1 week thing is the key phrase there. I was just wondering how sustainable do you think this is? Is this a turn to Andy for the rest of the season, you think? And how different do you think it'll look? That you always get that jolt. Say if you fire a coach, the next game the team responds. If you make a quarterback change, you see that little burst. Do you think this offense is going to look as good against the Bengals on Sunday? Or do you think Andy's the guy the rest of the year?
So it's hard to, like I say, I can't imagine they're going to be that efficient. They took care of the football, for the most part, protected him very well. What they do want to establish is the running game. And that was Canales' thing, his 1 year as the play caller in Tampa. And they didn't even have a good running game, but he was sort of stubbornly stuck with it. And these guys, as I said, Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis, the two free agent guards they signed, pretty stout dudes who can run block as well as pass block. So if they can establish the running game with Chuba Hubbard and Miles Sanders, but mostly Chuba, they can, stay. I think that they can stick around some games and be competitive after two very uncompetitive games, week 1 and week 2. And they lost by a combined 60 points. This was totally in disarray. And so good on Canales and Andy Dalton specifically to kind of just calm things down. And, Diener was nice enough to put me in touch with Andrew Whitworth last week. And Whitworth was saying, Dalton's perfect for this. He will be the calming presence in that locker room, in that organization, and he sure was.
You know what I wonder, and this is kind of a national topic right now a lot, is the changing state of offense and how much harder it is to get points and passing touchdowns, and passing is down. And I look back to what Joe Flacco did in Cleveland last year, and you look at some of the renaissances that you've seen from some older quarterbacks that maybe they're not as athletic or physically gifted. I wonder if just the ability to easily diagnose and get the ball out quickly against some of these defenses that are giving you those and willing to take those consistently and hit all of them can be a thing. And that where Andy is kind of nicely set up, even at his now, I remember one of my early years on the beat was they drafted this young kid named Andy Dalton, and now he's old and I'm old, and it's just the way it goes, I guess. But like that, even at his advanced age for a quarterback can really be a really nice fit and play as well now as he did at even some of the better times in his career.
It's a great point. And after that game Sunday in Vegas, I remember asking Canales, like, was there one play? Was there one throw? And there were a couple, in my mind that were just like, whoa. But you know what he wanted to talk about? He said, Dalton got us in the right place and he made the right reads. Mm-hmm. And we were efficient and it was sort of boring. It wasn't the sort of great soundbite you were looking for necessarily, but to your point, Diener, it's absolutely right on that they weren't even running their offense. I mean, that they didn't feel like Bryce was even allowing them to see what their offense could be. And this isn't beat up on Bryce. I mean, Bryce Young went through a horrible situation his rookie year. Like, let alone the fact that they didn't have Robert Hunt and Damian Lewis at guards. They went through like 8 right guards and 7 left guards due to injuries. The playmakers weren't separating, the receivers, I should say. And besides all that, they had a coaching change. They were flip-flopping play callers the entire season. And so it was a tough deal. And now this year, I think some of us forget, it's like, okay, well, he just tried to learn a second new offense with a second offensive coaching staff in 6 weeks. And so, but Andy Dalton, he can do it. I mean, you're right. I mean, it's almost like that. Joe Flacco's example is a great one. And, we'll see. I mean, does the slipper come off the foot this week and, against his former Bengals team for Andy Dalton? Maybe, but he certainly gives them the best chance to win right now.
I am curious because, so much focus, and rightly so, is on the offense and the quarterback position with the change and everything. But you look at that Carolina defense and you see 73 points in the first 2 weeks. It's like, okay, that's bad. How much of that was, they always talk about the complementary football where you're getting nothing from the offense at all. How much of that was a reflection of what the defense did the first couple of weeks? Or, do you expect this defense to be better because of the offense as well?
So last year, this team went through the course of the entire season without leading for a second in the fourth quarter. Their two wins were on game-ending field goals as time expired, with no time on the clock. And Brian Burns, when he was here, and I believed it then, and I believe it now, he would say the pass rush was bad. He had a subpar season, and he was like, yeah, good luck trying to, go after the quarterback when you're losing by 14 points in the fourth quarter every week. Like, they're just running the ball, or they're running these quick passes. They're not sitting back in 7-step drop having to throw downfield. And that's what we saw in Las Vegas on Sunday. Gardner Minshew and boy, the Raiders, that's a whole nother topic. Antonio Pierce, like, they were stubbornly trying to stick to the running game for 3 quarters and he and Luke Getsy were getting booed out of the stadium. But eventually they're like, we better throw the ball. And Jadeveon Clowney had his first sack. They finished with a team high 3 or a season high 3 sacks. And so definitely this complementary football is a thing. I'm still not convinced this is a great defense, but they look a lot better, when they can at least go after the quarterback once in a while and playing from ahead.
Before I let you go, I wanted to touch on one quick thing with you that's a little outside of the team. The Bengals are going through the beginning of lease negotiations and trying to renovate their stadium. And the ultimate comp for that is what Charlotte pushed through a renovation of a downtown stadium and sticking there. I'm curious what it ended up being. What did it end up being? An $800 million agreement? Is that what it ended up? How did that?
800 million in taxpayer money, and then the team I think's kicking in another 6 or something.
Another 6. So
Yeah.
you've got not quite a 50-50, but
Right.
a decent amount from the team. How hard was that to get through? What is that gonna look like in terms of time frame, and was that a lot of pulling teeth to get that done?
Well, it's interesting because the timing of it was terrible coming off of a 2-15 season, but it felt, guys, like it was all, and this is not unique to Charlotte, but that there were a lot of backroom wheeling and dealing. It was the city council that voted on it, and I went to one of those. I covered a couple of the meetings via Zoom. And then the last one, I was there in person, which went about 3 hours. But all which to say is, I think the Panthers had a couple allies on the city council, and it was a somewhat close vote, but they pushed it through without a lot of public input, is what I'm trying to say. The taxpayers here, some of them were very upset that there wasn't much time. It was like got announced, I want to say like at the beginning of June or maybe sometime in May. I'd have to go back. But it was like literally 4 or 5 weeks later, they were voting on it, like final vote. And so they had like one public meeting and that was it. And so, listen, David Tepper's worth $20 billion. Like he could have, bought and paid for a stadium renovation with loose change, more or less. But not you guys know how it works. That's not how they do it. And so I don't know. The thing I was a little critical of is they spent all this money. They asked for all this taxpayer money, and their renovations are just sort of like, they didn't. Not that they necessarily needed a retractable roof, but they didn't even do the little half roof that we've seen like in Miami, and I think Jacksonville's doing a transparent cover, but it'll be nicer. And I do like the fact they kept it downtown, rather than going out to Gastonia, North Carolina or something. It's a cool setting for a NFL stadium.
Well, I'll tell you what, as someone who is not looking forward to years, potentially decades of this lease being discussed and fought over here in Cincinnati, I'll go for some backroom dealings in 5 weeks and it's off the plate. Because it is not going to go away. It is not going to go away quietly in Cincinnati as they try to get from whatever their renderings they put out last week to wherever it lands. But I've always thought Charlotte and what they did is the closest fit to what I think certainly the Bengals would like to do in terms of making the stadium last a little bit longer and doing renovation. Joe, appreciate it, man. Great insight as always. Looking forward to getting down to Charlotte and catching up with you. Always a good time. And say hi to Andy Dalton for us.
I appreciate it, guys. Look forward to seeing you, Jay. Sorry we're going to miss you.
Yeah. Next time.
See you, Joe.
See you, Joe.